Chapter 13. If a man was scorched, though upon his clothes there was no sign of fire, it could be that the woman of Whitley Bay, who told of having found her sister burned to death on an unscorched bed, reported accurately. If the woman confessed that she had lied, that ends the mystery and that stimulates interest. The statement that somebody operated upon the police or by a coroner confessed has the meaning that has a statement that under pressure an apple produces cider. However, this analogy breaks down. I have never heard of an apple that would, if properly pressed, yield cider if wanted, or ginger ale if required, or home brew, all according to what was wanted. Once upon a time, when mine was a undeveloped suspiciousness, and I let the dogmatists pull their pedantries over my perceptions, I nevertheless collected occasional notes upon what seemed to me to be unexplained phenomena. I don't do things mildly, and at the same time much enjoy myself in various ways. I act as if trying to make allness out of something. A search for the unexplained became an obsession. I undertook the job of going through all scientific periodicals, at least by way of indexes published in English and French from the year 1800, available in the libraries of New York and London. As I went along with my little suspicions in their infancies, new subjects appeared to me. Something queer about some hailstorms, the odd and unexplained in archaeological discoveries, and the Arctic explorations. By the time I got through with the Grand Tour, as I called this search of all available periodicals to distinguish it from special investigations, I was interested in so many subjects that had cropped up later, or that I had missed earlier, that I made the tour all over again, and then again had the same experience and had to go touring again, and so on, until now it is my recognition that in every field of phenomena, and in later years I have multiplied my subjects by very much shifting to the newspapers, is somewhere the unexplained, or the irreconcilable, or the mysterious, in unformable motions of all planets, volcanic eruptions, murders, hailstones, protective colorization. No, what is that? Colorate. Man, protective colorations of insects, chemical reactions, disappearances of human beings, stars, comets, juries, diseases, cats, lampposts, newly married couples, cathode rays, hoaxes, impostures, wars, births, deaths. Everywhere is the tabooed or the disregarded. The monks of science dwell in smuggeries that are walled away from event jungles, or some of them do. Nowadays, a good many of them are going native. There are scientific dervishes who whirl amuck, brandishing startling statements, but mostly they whirl not far from their origins, and their excitements and are exaggerations of old fashioned complacencies. Because of several cases that I have noted, the subject of fires attracted my attention. One reads hundreds of accounts of fires, and many of them are mysterious, but one's ruling thought is that the unexplained would be renderable in terms of accidents, carelessness, or arson, if one knew all the circumstances, period. But keep this subject in mind, and in every other field of phenomena, one comes upon cases that are irreconcilables. Glasgow News, May 20th, 1878. Doings in John Shattock's farmhouse near Bridgewater. Fires had started up unaccountably. A superintendent of police investigated and suspected a servant girl and kinder, age 12, because he had seen a hayrick flame while she was passing it. Loud raps were heard. Things in the house, such as dishes and loaves of bread, moved about. The policeman ignored whatever he could not explain and arrested the girl, accusing her of tossing lighted matches. But a magistrate freed her, saying that the evidence was insufficient. There's a story of devilish manifestations in the Quebec Daily Mercury, October 6th, 1880, for 2 weeks in the Hudson Hotel in the town of Hudson on the Ottawa River. Furniture had been given to disorderly conduct. The beds had been especially excitable. A fire had broken out in a stall in the stable. This fire was quenched, but another fire broke out. A priest was sent for, and he sprinkled the stable with holy water. The stable burned down. There are several recorded cases of such fires ending with the burning of buildings, but a similarity that runs through the great majority of the stories is of fires localized in special places and not extending. They are oftenest in the presence of a girl aged from 12 to 20, but seldom do they occur at night when they would be most dangerous. It is a peculiarity. See back to the case of the fires in the House of Bedford. It seems that if those fires had been ordinary fires, the house would have burned down. The cases are of fires in unscorched surroundings. New Zealand Times, December 9th, 1886, copying from the San Francisco Bulletin about October 14th, that wily bro, 12 years old, who had caused excitement in the town of Turlock, Madison County, Cal, by setting things afire by his glance, had been expelled from the Turlock school because of his freaks. His parents had cast him off, believing him to be possessed by a devil, but a farmer had taken him in and had sent him to school. On the first day, there were 5 fires in the school, one in the center of the ceiling, one in the teacher's desk, one in her wardrobe, and 2 on the wall. The boy discovered all and cried from fright. The trustees met and expelled him that night. For another account, see the New York Herald, October 16th, 1886. Setting fire to a teacher's desk or to her wardrobe is understandable and would have been more understandable to me when I was 12 years old. But in terms of no known powers of mischievous youngsters, can there be an explanation of setting a ceiling or walls afire? It seems to me that no yarn spinner would have thought of any such particular or would have made his story look improbable with it if he had thought of it. I have other accounts in which similar statements occur. This particular of fires on walls is unknown in standardized yarns of uncanny doings. If writers of subsequent accounts probably have never heard of Wily Bro, it is improbable that several of them could invent or would invent anything so unlikely. It seems that my reasoning is that, under some circumstances, if something is highly unlikely, it is probable. John Stuart Mill missed that. Upon the 6th of August, 1887, in a little 2-story frame house in Victoria Street, Woodstock, New Brunswick, occupied by Reginald C. Hoyt, his wife, 4 children of his own, and 2 nieces, fires broke out. See the New York World, August 8th, 1887. Within a few hours, there were about 40 fires. They were fires in unscorched surroundings. They did not extend to their surroundings because they were immediately put out or because some unknown condition limited them. The fires can be traced to no human agency, and even the most skeptical are staggered. Now, a curtain high up and out of reach would burst into flames, then a bed quilt in another room, a basket of clothes on a shed, a child's dress hanging on a hook. New York Herald, January 6th, my birthday, 1895, fires in the home of Adam Caldwell, 84 Guernsey Street, Greenpoint, Brooklyn. That in 20 hours preceding noon, January 5th, when Caldwell's frame house burned down, there had been many fires. Policemen had been sent to investigate. They had seen furniture burst into flames. Policemen and firemen had reported that the fires were of unknown origin. The fire marshal said it might be thought that the child Rhoda started 2 of the fires, but she cannot be considered guilty of the others, as she was being questioned when some of them began. I do not want to be quoted as a believer in the supernatural, but I have no explanation to offer as to the cause of the fires or of the throwing around of the furniture. Caldwell's story was that upon the afternoon of January 4th, in the presence of his wife and his stepdaughter Rhoda, age 16, a crash was heard. A large empty parlor stove had fallen to the floor. 4 pictures fell from the walls. Caldwell had been out upon his return while hearing an account of what had occurred. He smelled smoke. A bed was afire. He called a policeman, Roundsman Daly, who put out the fire and then, because of unaccountable circumstances, remained in the house. It was said that the roundsman saw wallpaper near the shoulder of Caldwell's son, Willie, start to burn. Detective Sergeant Dunn arrived. There was another fire, and a heavy lamp fell from a hook. The house burned down, and the Caldwells who were in poor circumstances, lost everything but their clothes. They were taken to the police station. Captain Rhodes of the Greenpoint precinct said, "The people were arrested had nothing to do with the strange fires. The more I look into it, the deeper the mystery. So far, I can attribute it to no other cause than a supernatural agency. Why the fires broke out under the very noses of the men I sent to investigate. Sergeant Dunn, there were things that happened before my eyes that I did not believe were possible. New York Herald, January 7th. Policemen and firemen artfully tricked by a pretty young girl. Mr. J.L. Hope of Flushing, L.I. had called upon Captain Rhodes, telling him that Rhoda had been a housemaid in his home, where between November 19th and December 19th, 4 mysterious fires had occurred. Now the captain was sure that Rhoda's guilt. Wait, hold on. Now the captain was sure of Rhoda's guilt, and he told her so. She was frightened and was advised to tell the truth. And Rhoda told what she was advised to tell. She sobbed that she had started the fires because she did not like the neighborhood in which she lived and wanted to move away. That she had knocked pictures from the walls while her mother was in another part of the house and had dropped burning matches into beds, continuing her trickeries after policemen, detectives, and firemen had arrived. The Caldwells were poor people and occupied only the top floor of the house that burned down. Caldwell, a carpenter, had been out of work 2 years, and the family was living on the small wages of his son. Insurance was not mentioned. The police captain's conclusion was that the fires that had seemed supernatural to him were naturally accounted for because if, when Rhoda was in Flushing, she set things afire, fires in her own home could be so explained. Rather than to start a long investigation into the origin of the fires in Flushing, the police captains gave the girl what was considered sound and wholesome advice. And though it seems quaint today, the girl listened to advice. Pretty young girls have tricked more than policemen and firemen. Possibly a dozen male susceptibles could have looked right at this pretty young girl and not have seen her strike a match and flip it into furniture. But no flip of a match could set wallpaper afire. The case is like the case of Emma Pigot. Only in one person's motives could fires be attributed, but by no known means could she have started some of these fires, said Dr. Hastings H. Hart of the Russell Sage Foundation, as reported in the newspapers May 10th, 1931. Morons, for the most part, can be the most useful citizens, and a great deal of the valuable work being done in the United States is being done by such mentally deficient persons. Dr. Hart was given very good newspaper space for his opinion, which turned out to be popular. One can't offend anybody with any statement that is interpreted as applying to everybody else. And as much as my own usefulness has not been very widely recognized, I am a little flattered myself. To deny, ridicule, or reasonably explain away occurrences that are the data of this book is what I call useful. A general acceptance that such things are a general acceptance that such things are would be upsetting. Yeah, I am an evil one, quite as was. A general acceptance that such things are would. A general acceptance that such things are would be unsettling. I am an evil one, quite as was anybody in the past, who collected data that were contrary to the orthodoxy of his time. Some of the most useful work is being done in the support of taboo. The break of taboo in any savage tribe would be of perhaps fatal disorders. As to the taboos of savages, my impressions are that it is their taboos that are keeping them from being civilized, that consequently, one fetish is worth 100 missionaries. I shall take an account of mysterious fires from the St. Louis Globe Democrat, December 19th, 1891. I shall go on to quote from a Canadian newspaper with the idea of supporting Dr. Hart's observations. Reporters, scientists, policemen, spiritualists all have investigated phenomena of poltergeist girls in ways essentially the same as the way of a Canadian newspaperman, and that has been to pick out whatever agreed with their preconceptions or with their mental deficiencies or their social usefulness and to disregard everything else. According to the story in the Globe Democrat, there had been extraordinary occurrences in the home of Robert Dawson, a farmer at Tora near Toronto, Canada. In his household were his wife and an adopted daughter, an English girl, Jenny Bramwell, age 14. Adopted daughters with housemaids are attracting my attention in these cases. The girl had been ill. She had gone into a trance and had exclaimed, "Look at that," pointing to the ceiling. The ceiling was afire. Soon the girls startled Mr. and Mrs. Dawson by pointing to another fire. Next day, many fires broke out. As soon as one was extinguished, another started up. While Mrs. Dawson and the girl were sitting facing a wall, the wallpaper blazed. Jenny Bromwell's dress flamed, and Mrs. Dawson's hands were burned, extinguishing the fire. For a week, fires broke out. A kitten flamed. A circumstance that is unlike a particular in the Bedford case is that furniture carried outside and set in the yard did not burn. An account in the Toronto Globe, November 9th, was by a reporter who was a person of usefulness. He told of the charred patches of wallpaper which looked as if a lighted lamp had been held to the places. Conditions were miserable. All the furniture had been moved to the yard. The girl had been sent back to the orphan asylum from which she had been adopted because the fires had been attributed to her. With her departure, phenomena had stopped. The reporter described her as a half-witted girl who had walked about setting things afire. He was doubtful as to what to think of the reported flaming of the kitten and asked to see it. He wrote that it was nothing but a kitten with a few hairs on its back slightly singed. But the chief difficulty was to explain the fire on the ceiling and the fires on the walls. I'll not experiment, but I'll assume that I could flip matches all day at a wall and not set wallpaper afire. The reporter asked Mrs. Dawson whether the girl had any knowledge of chemistry. According to him, the answer was that this little girl, age 14, who had been brought up in an orphan asylum, was well versed in the rudiments of science. Basing upon this outcome of the investigations and forgetting that he had called the well-versed little chemist half-witted, or being more sophisticated than I seem to think, and seeing no inconsistency between scientific knowledge and imbecility, the useful reporter then needed only several data more to solve the mystery. He inquired in the town and learned that the well-versed and half-witted little chemist was also an incorrigible little thief. He went to the drug store and learned that several times the girl had been sent there on errands. The mystery was solved. The girl had stolen some chemical, which she applied to various parts of Dawson's house. All right, that's where I'm stopping.